Mr. Bo from MrBoEnglish.com. We've been doing the quadratics unit in Khan Academy Algebra, and we're on the solving by factoring. Let me get rid of this window here. Then solving by factoring lesson, and this is our third video in this lesson. It's going to be solving equations using structure, and hopefully you were in my class for this, or your teacher covered this already. We're going to talk a little bit about it, but it's a really super important method in math, and you'll use it all the way up until the highest levels of math. You keep using this method because what it does is it takes something that's really too complicated and it makes it simpler, or puts it in a form that we can solve, and then we take it back after we solve that form. Then we take the form back up to a little bit more complicated one again and solve that, and it works everywhere in math. So let's take a look at it, an example here. So our first question tells us the substitution, and most of the times you're going to have to identify this yourself. So we're going to find this thing x squared, this expression x squared plus 6, and every time we see it we're going to replace it with the variable p. And so we have x squared plus 6 squared, x squared plus 6, quantity squared, minus 21 is equal to 4 x squared plus 24, and I'm going to identify that I can pull out a 4 from here, so I'm going to have x squared plus 6, so it's 4 times x squared plus 6. So now we have x squared plus 6 squared minus 21. And now every time I see x squared plus 6, I'm going to get rid of it, and I'm going to write a p instead. And it doesn't have to be a p, it can be any variable, not x, any variable other than x. So there are some that we don't want to use because we use them for other stuff all the time. So after we get rid of this and make this substitution, we end up with a different equation. I'm going to subtract 4p from both sides, and I'm going to end up with p squared minus 4p minus 21 is equal to 0. And this looks a lot like everything we've been doing for the last 15 videos, except we got p instead of x or t. So we're going to solve it by factoring. So I want something that multiplies out to be negative 21 that adds to be negative 4. So let's see, I have negative 3 times 7, and that adds up to be 4, and I have 3 times negative 7, and that adds up to be negative 4. So those are my factors, and I end up with p plus 3 or p minus 7 is equal to 0. So I have p equals negative 3 or p equals 7. All right, and it looks like we're done. Oh, wait a minute, I went ahead. After this, we'd go ahead and substitute this back in. I got a little bit excited. I went over our goal here. So after we substitute, what do we end up with? We end up with this equation here, which is this one, and that's all it's asking for. It's not asking for us to solve. Okay, so this one doesn't tell us, and we're going to have to find the substitution on our own. Negative 6x minus 14, and I can identify that I can pull out a negative 2 here, and I end up with 3x plus 7. So I have this 3x plus 7 here, and I have this 3x plus 7 here. I'm going to substitute And I'm going to substitute q because, I don't know, I want you to know that you can use anything. It doesn't have to be p. So when I see 3x plus 7 here, I'm going to write q. And 3x plus 7 here, I'm going to write q. So I have, wow, q squared is equal to negative 2q. So I know that q squared plus q is equal to 0, or q times, that's 2 plus 2q, or, made mistakes everywhere right there, q plus 2 is equal to 0. So I know q is equal to 0, or q is equal to negative 2. And we do that all the time. And it looks like we're done. That was really easy to solve, right? Much easier to solve than this one up here. But we're not done yet. We're going to substitute the x back in. So instead of q, I'm going to write 3x plus 7 is equal to 0, or 3x plus 7 is equal to negative 2. And I've got minus 7, and divide by 3. And I've got x is equal to negative 7/3. Over here I've got minus 7 and minus 7. I've got negative 9, and divide by 3 and divide by 3. And so I've got x is equal to negative 3. So I have x is equal to negative 7/3, or x is equal to negative 3. And it wants one value. I'm going to write negative 3 because that's the easy one to write here. All right, let's look again. We have 3x minus 2 squared minus 4 is equal to 9x minus 6. I want to see that I can pull out a 3, so that's going to be 3 times 3x minus 2. And now I can see I have 3x minus 2 in both spots. I want to make that r. There's no reason for r, just I don't want to keep using the same variable, and then maybe you think you need to use that variable too. We have a variable that we can use that tells us something, that's the best choice, but this isn't a word problem, so this isn't a real world problem. So after I substitute r for 3x minus 2, I get r squared minus 4 is equal to 3r, or r squared minus 3r minus 4 is equal to 0. So now I want to factor. So I want something that multiplies to be negative 4. Negative 1 times 4, and that's 3. That's not negative 3. And I've got 1 times negative 4, and that's negative 3. So here we are. So I've got x plus 1. It's not x. It's r. r plus 1 times r minus 4 is equal to 0. So r is equal to negative 1, or r is, say r, write x. R is equal to 4. And now I want to go back and I want to substitute. What is r? R is 3x minus 2. We made up r. There is no r in this problem. We just made up something to replace this piece, so we can use that piece all together and don't get ourselves confused. Minus 2 is equal to 4, so I got plus 2 is 6, and then I've got x is equal to 2, and I've got plus 2, I have 1 divided by 3, so I have x is equal to 1/3. So my two answers are x is 1/3 or x is equal to 2. So let's find 2. All right, and we have one more here. Hope you guys are getting the hang of this. This is not that difficult. It's just 2 steps. So we have a really complicated equation like this, and sometimes it's not actually in this form. We massage it. We move stuff around to put it in that form, and then we do the substitution. You'll see that when we're doing completing the square. So it's giving us the substitution 6x plus 5, and the question is, what is the equation with m? So this one is going to be pretty short. So I've got 6x plus 5 squared minus 10 is equal to negative 18x minus 15, and I see that I can pull out a negative 5. No, that's not what I want. A negative 3 here. And I'll get 6x plus 5. So then if I replace these with m, it gives that to me. I get m squared minus 10 is equal to negative 3m, or m squared plus 3m minus 10 equals 0. And where is that? M squared plus 3m minus 10 is equal to 0. All right, that's how solving by structure or solving by substitution works. Keep thinking about this, because you'll see it again and again. This concept of making something simpler so that we can solve it, and then substituting back in. You'll see that in trigonometry, see that in calculus, see that in everywhere. So get used to it and try to get good at it. If you have any more questions, get a hold of us at mrboenglish.com. Thank you very much. Mr. Bo English รับสอนนักเรียนตั้งแต่ป .3 ขึ้นไปทางอินเทอร์เน็ตในสไตล์ EP ครับผู้สนใจช่วยติดต่อครูแจงหรือไปเว็บไซต์ที่ www.mrboenglish.com